It's a small but highly talented group. So, okay, since each one of you work in a large organization, but in a let's say dedicated institute within this organization, please explain more. What is CoPace? What is Cradle? What is Toyota AI?
Yeah, good afternoon. My name is Jürgen Bielow. I'm with Continental CoPace, and CoPace we call our startup organization of Continental, where we want to basically connect startups with the corporate Continental. We have basically three arms or three elements. One is the incubator, where we basically give our employees the chance to work in a startup environment. Like an entrepreneur, they are getting 3 to 4 months into that environment to basically develop concepts and bring them on the road. We made already one spin-off now. The second element is, we call that cooperation program. It's basically running POCs with startups. We connect the startups. We see us as a kind of mentor, connector, and we run the POCs with the aim that we want to prove the solution of the startup within the automotive environment. And this can lead to a partnership with Continental. This can lead to a possible investment. As we know, money is there. I mean, we will talk about that probably later on. But to prove that in an automotive environment is rare, and we give that to we And the third arm is the investment arm. The investment arm where we invest money into young companies, which we are working close with our M&A department together. And we are with all these activities, we are very close together, so we don't distinguish a lot between the investment side and the corporation side, etc. That's CoPace, and that's what we do.
Thank you, John.
Hi, I'm John Saw, and I'm part of Hyundai Cradle, and Hyundai Cradle is Hyundai Motor Company's strategic venture capital and open innovation operations for the corporation. And we currently have 5 current areas of interest, including artificial intelligence, robotics, smart mobility, smart cities, and eco-friendly energy. We are evolving and continue to grow our list of themes, but those are the current 5 that we focus on at the moment.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm Jim Adler. I'm Managing Director of Toyota AI Ventures, and we're a corporate venture capital fund. We were founded in July 2017. We focus on artificial intelligence, data and cloud, as applied to autonomous mobility, so not just cars, and robotics. We are a seed and early stage fund. We are $100 million. Our typical check size is around $2 million. We've gone as high as $8 million. We've gone below $1 million. We tend to run at startup speed, so we've done 17 deals in our first 15, 16 months. Not all of them announced yet, but we are really focused on being founder friendly and encouraging our companies to be financially successful. We feel the marketplace is a great arbiter of value, and we want to tap into that value as the innovation drives this step change in mobility. We want to understand what experiments are being run and how we can learn from them and ultimately profit from them.
Jim, we'll follow with you. Since all of you works globally, basically. Can you just give us a bit of the trends that you see outside, not just in Israel?
Sure. So with respect to the autonomy stack, we see a tremendous amount of innovation, certainly here in Israel in the Valley, around perception, prediction, and planning are the way we look at the stack. So tremendous innovation in perception, but we think that there's tremendous need around prediction. What are the obstacles or objects in the scene going to do? What's a pedestrian going to do? Are they going to cross against the light or not? Autonomous cars or autonomous vehicles are social animals. So how do they interact with all the other social animals on the road? It's an unsolved problem, and it's, I think, tremendous enabling technology. And the other thing we look at is operational technologies. So those that can provide a service today and grow over time and build this deep wealth of technical and operational capability. You see that certainly in ride hailing, but you're going to see that in like one of our companies is a micro shuttle service that's autonomous now, driving now, called May Mobility. Another one is Joby Aviation, which is taking mobility to the skies with a ride-hailing type service, but in the skies.
Okay, John?
So I was going to pick that one, but I'll pick another one. So I would say what's interesting is that as we get more automated vehicles, and so therefore at some point that the human is no longer driving, you have a computer driving the vehicle, then there's a greater discussion now, or an increasing discussion on what happens on in the interior experience of that ride, and what do you do there to make a differentiated experience, either as a service or as a brand, and what can be done through technology, through machine learning, through sensing, through design, to make that interior experience interesting and differentiated and useful and productive. More than just say, oh, what will you do in the car? You'll just see your smartphone or you'll sleep or whatever, but what else can be done there? And I think there's a lot of creative things that could be done that we're just beginning to explore, of that time and space of being in that vehicle, if in fact the computer is driving the car.
Okay, Jürgen?
What should I add? All was said. No, but we are focusing basically on autonomous. I mean, that Jim mentioned that experience, we call that what more or less John said. And beside that, services is a topic, of course, services around that. And also industry, industry 4.0, and how to increase efficiency and predictive maintenance in the plants and all that. I mean, BMW said pleasure to drive here now, and since a few years ago, and now it will be more pleasure to get driven, right? And with that, the interior of the car gets much more important, and we think it goes, of course, up to cognitive topics, cognitive science, cognitive. So how can you predict what's next? And these are topics which we are taking a look to.
Okay.
Hey, Eyal, can I just jump in?
Sure.
I hate to agree with my panelists so much. We should be arguing more. But I think there is this idea that these vehicles are not just going to drive themselves, but they're going to anticipate the passengers' and drivers' needs. And that means that the technologies we use for robotics, the artificial intelligence technologies there, will actually find their way into the car. So people often ask, why is Toyota doing robotic investments? Because we really feel that they're the same thing. An autonomous vehicle is just a really big robot with wheels. And so we made an investment in an Israeli company called Intuition Robotics, which is a sort of a sidekick companion robot for older adults. And people scratch their head, why'd you do that deal? Because there's so much understanding required to help older adults navigate their increasingly constricted lives, that we feel that kind of artificial intelligence will find its way to anticipate many, many more of the activities in our lives, certainly within the car and even beyond the car.
Okay, so in that respect, so which type of company do you think will thrive? Is that only the AI type companies, or the operators will, eventually there will be some winners, right? According to our database, there's about 1,000 companies here in Israel. It's somehow evolved in mobility. Who will thrive eventually? Is it going to be the operator? Is it going to be the technology guys? Who eventually will win?
I mean, it's hard to say. I don't want to say they will win, but I mean, at the end, you need the sensor part, and I mean, you need the whole chain, let's say, yeah, or the whole stack basically to make it happen, and it has to be 100% reliable. We are talking safety now, at least when it comes to autonomous driving, but also when we talk to, I mean, prediction in the car and all that. We are also talking safety, so hard to say who will win. I do not. I rather do not want to make or have that discussion. Who will?
That's
win.
the whole point, right? That's why you're here.
Well, Toyota will win. Oh, wait.
Okay. That's a fair answer, not necessarily right, but fair.
No. I not to be glib, but I think that data native companies are going to win this.
Okay.
And that's because data is the understanding and ability to manipulate data at scale is going to be one of the core competencies you need to learn and to put goods and services into action. And that's what's going to own the customer experience. So one of the reasons we're doing investments is many of the automotive companies all the way down the stack from OEMs, tier ones, tier twos, need to become more data native. And so we need to tap into that innovation that's happening on data AI, cloud technologies, which traditionally the automotive industry really hasn't led. And that's why, like, I don't think the automotive industry should be so worried about the traditional companies. It's really the high-tech companies that are moving into this industry. Mark Andreessen famously said in 2011, software is eating the world. Now cars are on the menu. And so when are we going to wake up? Well, we are waking up. I mean, we're all here. And we need to really become that software, that data company if we're going to survive and thrive.
John?
So to refute a popular belief, size does not matter, right? Size is, in this case, the size of a corporation, as Jim was just saying, because in effect, the automotive industry is becoming digital, is becoming a digital business. So we've seen in other industries in the past that the size of the company and their market share is not enough of a protection against the disruption through technological change. So I think it does require a company to think about car companies specifically, what it means to become a digital business. And that's a very simple question, but it's a very complex answer, how do you get there. I also think it's a little bit controversial. What I might say here is that I think that car companies, in a digital business, you have consolidation, and so there may not be as many manufacturers as we have today. So if that's the case, then companies need to be, car OEMs probably should be thinking about how do we manage the reduction in brands, right? It's not because we like to think about that, it's because it's the reality of becoming a digital business, right? Whether it's phones or cameras, whatever, when you have consolidation, you have a reduction in brands, and so the question is how do you reduce brands to prepare for the future? And I think that's a question that is an important one to think about.
Interesting. Two of you just opened offices here in Israel. You visit Israel many times. What you looking for, and why you have an office here? Why you visit so often? What is it that you're looking for?
I mean, I think Israel is one of the most profound startup ecosystems in the world, and by DNA, Israel is a startup nation, basically. You know, acting as a small nation, restricted area, and with limited resources, etc. And I think that the competence of the startups and the universities are extremely good. And coming from this cyber part and from this vision part, etc., and the needed AI, you can find that here in Israel. And the quality of the startups are really great. So we think, we don't want necessarily go too much into seed, very extremely early directly from the university or so, and we see startups which have already some traction and can really help to solve the problems which we see and the challenges which we see.
Are you focusing on specific areas, or you're open for everything? E-mobility from one side to AI on the other side?
I mean, in general, we are open. However, as I said before, in-car sensing and in-car topics are important for us. I mean, we have a big interior business as Continental. Also, the whole thing, health and emotions, are important. Machine learning is important. I mean, we see that machine learning chips, machine learning software. This is a huge challenge. I mean, it was talked about, how do we handle the data? So therefore, this is important, and these are the main areas. And we have to think not so much vertical. We have to think more horizontal. Cross industry and cross topics.
John?
Yeah, Yes, we did open up office here in Tel Aviv, and we have two fantastic venture investment professionals, Ruby and Kobe. They're here in the audience. I would also say we have a launch party event tonight, free alcohol if you, starting at 6:30 tonight, if you want to come in. And it's been said I've heard somebody describe that startups is Israel's national sport. And I think that's a great analogy because what it means is not only you have a passion for it, but you have a competition within this ecosystem, right? So we often find multiple startups within a given area, and so even that, because of that, you have a lot of great competition among the startups that try and differentiate themselves and so on. So we find relatively high quality here across the themes that I mentioned in the very beginning.
Okay.
So I think something historic is happening in Israel that has happened before. So if you look at how Silicon Valley was built, it was really built on the backs of the military post-World War II in the Cold War. That built, the semiconductor industry was really built on the backs of sustained military spending. It's like an inductor. You have to have constant current to keep that inductor charged. And I think that built semiconductors, which built computers, which built the venture capital industry, that built the universities in the area, and it's this flywheel, to change metaphors, that has been built over decades and decades. And you see something very similar happening in Israel. Sustained investment in people by the military has really helped. And you see the people that come out of the military are taught leadership skills early. A failing startup is not as bad as losing your life. So they are calibrated to loss and failure. And then the technologies that come out are very much calibrated to those that are important military applications: computer vision, security, intelligence generally. And these technologies, coincidentally, are very attractive and enabling for autonomous automotive applications and AI. So you see this little Silicon Valley coming out of the same primordial soup that Silicon Valley came out of. And I think we're seeing history repeat itself, and it's really fascinating to see.
Interesting. Can you also elaborate more how you can actually help Israeli startups that you either invest or meet or want to collaborate, whatever?
Yeah, I mean, one thing is to develop the technology and to do a POC and have a prototype and have a fantastic solution, which you probably never saw before. But of course, the key for us is to scale that up, right? I mean, to bring that into a mass production product, make it on the concept side to even that we can industrialize such a product, and scale that up and bring that into the mass market. So the fantastic thing is not that we are only looking for startups, but also startups are looking for us, right? I mean, in order to do the next step, yeah. And again, I mean, money is one thing, but technology and to implement that and bring that into application, bring that to life, that's another topic.
So in practical terms, what does this mean? So if a startup comes to you, you find the startup, what is it that you offer to him? Come do a POC in Germany, or we will do the POC in Israel, or we will invest and then we'll decide to do the POC? What a startup should expect? I
mean, we are open doing that here in Israel or doing that in Germany. What we offer is that we do a POC. We don't have an innovation lab here in Israel. We would like to do the POC directly linked to a business unit or to a search field, how we call that. So to the real life, to the guys who are doing the application in our company, because they know best, what is required. And so what we offer is basically a full POC, 3, 4, 5, 6 months or so, in order to integrate this solution into an application, into a car, into real life. We have a kind of mentorship in the company, so we mentor the startups. We take them by the hand when needed. And we have the specialists basically working with them together on a daily basis.
Okay, John?
Yeah, so our corporate venturing activity is part of a potential, different menu of what we can do to bring in outside talent and ideas into the company. It could also be joint ventures or relationships with the university or research institutes. We combine that with our internal resources in our vehicle design, development, production engineering, and also Hyundai Motor Group has another set of capabilities in logistics, finance, et cetera. So what we're trying to do is combine our own internal capabilities with and match them up with the startup. Where that actually happens, it would, honestly, probably a lot of it in Korea, because that's where we have the bulk of our resources. Having said that, in Silicon Valley, we have a slightly bigger operation than here in Tel Aviv. I do anticipate here in Tel Aviv, and my desire that we would grow our operation here so that we can do those early POCs here first to get some momentum before we introduce it into headquarters.
So practically that means that the Israeli guys will pick up the phone and call Korea, or they will call Silicon Valley first?
Probably a little bit of both. I think maybe I can, from our viewpoint, we've been out in operation for 7 years in Silicon Valley, so we have a little bit more, maybe insight into how it could work. But over time, we would want them to work directly with the headquarters people.
Okay, Jim?
Yeah, so the way we approach this is really with a financial first orientation. Why? Because we feel that when things are early stage, the team and the technology starts coming together, we don't know what that's going to grow into. And so many corporates, not most, but many corporate investors, they look for strategic alignment too early, in our opinion. What we want to do is we want to take a great technology, great team, jump on the cap table with other financial investors, and then watch the company grow. Meanwhile, we have a portfolio value creation team internally post-close that scours Toyota, 370,000 employees, looking for opportunities for the startup to plug in to the Toyota ecosystem.
So let me translate what I just heard. Basically, what you're saying is we are too big of an organization that will be able to sell our product internally. So we first want to invest and hopefully make money because it's a good team. But hopefully we'll be able to help the startups.
That's right. That's
Okay.
right. And sometimes it works great, and sometimes there's the fit is not right.
So the entrepreneur should see you as a good options for future collaboration with Toyota rather than solely the process that will bring him to the end results that he's looking for.
That's right, and I think that's not necessarily a bad thing, because at the end of the day, if everyone is baked on getting the startup plugged into Toyota, that could become a very dysfunctional relationship. I was an entrepreneur most of my career. I've had corporate investors from the biggest in the valley, and an ill-conceived POC and engagement can kill a startup. We think we're loving them to death. And that could be just toxic for the startup. So it's important that we understand the delicacy of a startup, or how delicate a startup is, and respect that. Okay. And figure out what makes sense, and do the deal when it makes sense for both parties.
And that was exactly the reason when we thought about to build up or to create Copays, basically, because we want to be this connector, we want to be this mentor. We are overlooking POCs, we call that, we are joking around, POC factory, but we are overlooking these POCs. We look that we have a statement of work, that we look that we have milestones, et cetera, and at the end of the day, we are looking into potential partnership or potential investment, etc. Of course, we could also, or we will also invest without a POC when it makes sense. Yeah.
Okay. Good. Risks, you see what type of risks that you see in this ecosystem, not necessarily in Israel, but of course, also what you saw in Israel. Too many of a kind, technology is not good enough, focusing on too narrow, whatever. What kind of risk that you see? John?
So I think there's the usual risk that come with startups in general, but I think beyond that, I would say the market risk is, for me, one that you know, I think about, you know, even in the world of autonomous vehicles, the market risk, you know, timing for one thing, right? I think it is hard to predict when you get to level 4. How do you actually make money in robotaxi fleets? Because the human version doesn't make money. Now, one could argue the human version doesn't work because the cost structure of the pay that you give to the human driver. Nonetheless, nobody's really making a lot of money. Now, there's valuations that are sky high, et cetera, so there's a lot of future potential. I get it, but still there's risk there. And then there's risk of the adoption, the regulatory risk that is still pending. And I know we had the panel previous about, okay, we want to be forward thinking about that, but who knows how the political landscape falls out and affects these non-market factors, non-technological factors in any market, especially in robotaxi, automated vehicle, mobility service fleets is I think, a huge risk.
Jim?
So there's all the risks John mentioned, for sure. And I think we are in a bit of a hype cycle, which is not, people say it's like a terrible thing. Prices are signals, and we have to honor that signal. And as we, for those that don't know the Gartner hype cycle, you know, we enter this peak hype, and then we crash into this trough of disillusionment, and then we eventually come up to this plateau of productivity, they say. And so the risk for investors is that the hype cycle price is higher than the plateau of probability value that you can eventually exit at. So, but it's an important time now, because you do, Eyal, to your point, you have the hype cycle draws a lot of capital and a lot of startups into the space, which try a lot of things and figures out what works, what doesn't work, and there is fallout and consolidation, and that's part of this game, which is why 2/3 of venture deals don't return capital. And you have to go in with your eyes open to that reality, whether it's regulatory, technology, stack risk. We think that because we are potentially customers of these startups, we understand stack risk. So the idea is that if your customers are potentially investing in you, they are ultimately going to buy your product, so they will be good arbiters of the value you're creating. So you look at an Israeli technology company, they're going to create a product ultimately that Toyota or our tier ones would find attractive. It's very hard to go up stack for a startup. You know, you see these brilliant technologists, they could spend years developing a product no one wants on this amazingly Nobel Prize winning technology that no one has any use for. And the customer will tell you whether that technology has a place in the market. And so we are up stack from those technologies, and therefore can be good arbiters of the product that they're building, and therefore help tilt the playing field in their favor for success.
Any addition?
I mean, very good point from Jim. The customer will tell what is needed at the end, and I think here we go. I mean, we know pretty well the market. We think the question: do we think digital enough? Yeah, I agree. Yeah, that's another question. But we could also lead the startup a little bit in the direction to the market, you know, and make some corrections on the way, you know. So this is potentially lowering the risk, right? Because when I'm going too early to the customer, it's not a good idea. When I'm going too late to a customer, it's also not a good idea. So industry insights are very important. What I and Jim mentioned that, and John also a little bit. I mean, what we see is that probably startups are over-evaluated now, and this is a risk for the startup. You know, I mean. When you see suddenly a startup is valued at, I don't know, 500 million or billion or what have you, and still
that's a bargain.
There's no product there. There's nothing there. There are 40, 50 guys there, et cetera. So there is a huge risk, and the other risk is the winner takes it all. When we see what Waymo is doing, what Cruise is doing, then the big question is: are these the operating system of the future for autonomous driving, and all the other, you know, companies which are doing data fusion and these kind of AD stacks, et cetera, is that on risk, you know, like you have it in a smartphone, you have Android and you have iOS, and that's it. Yeah.
Okay. Say I want to become an entrepreneur. I just left the army 35 years ago. And I want to start my own business, okay? Obviously, I know a little bit of this technology, of that technology. What kind of, tips you're going to give me? I mean, should I focus on one area? Should I, call you when at this stage or another stage? I mean, what kind of tips would you give, an entrepreneur?
I'll start. Couple things. I'll just kick it off with a couple things. One is don't try to do too much. There's an old venture capital adage that startups die of indigestion, not starvation. They try to do too much. And so focus. Focus on, if you have a technology expertise, focus it on a market segment that you think is the most lucrative. And create a product market fit for that customer base. From a investment perspective, venture capitalists we're not that smart. Come to us, give us a checkpoint of where you are. Just get to know us before the end of your raise. And let us know where you're going and check in with us periodically so we can get to know you and we can get quite excited about the problem space you're solving, and then we can see where your progress is. And nothing is a straight line. Nothing is just up and to the right. Never happens. I love entrepreneurs that are humble enough to understand when the market hits them hard. Mike Tyson, famous prize fighter, said, "No fight plan survived the first punch in the face." And analogously, no business plan survives the first contact with the market. Same thing. And let your investor base know that you know that that's true.
So I would, my advice would be using a story. It really comes from the California gold rush in the 1800s. And, the gold rush was there because there's gold in them dar hills, right? And so there was a desire to get rich and finding gold. But it turns out the people that really made a lot of money reliably were the people selling shovels and pickaxes, right? Because they were providing the tools to the people looking for gold. So it's a simple story, and I think the complexity of it, though, is like what is in this world of automated vehicles, of cybersecurity, of data monetization, of mobility service, what is the equivalent shovel and pickaxe in this industry? And that's the hard question, but I think thinking about that, right? So if you're just starting out, right, look at the companies that are already out there, right? And as we saw, there's in Israel alone only over 400, including large companies, but a lot of companies, right, already. Try to observe what's going on and see what where you can actually make the money in selling the equivalent of the shovel or the pickaxe.
Jorgen?
Yeah, again, not a lot to add, right? I mean, don't be too self-convinced of your solution and your thinking and your.
That's contradicting becoming an entrepreneur, right?
Yeah, somehow you could say that, but we see startups which are really so self-convinced that you think, my gosh, you have to be realistic in terms of timing, in terms of solution, in terms of how we probably can consult you also somehow or mentor you, and that's it basically. You have probably an excellent partner. You have excellent partners and the right mix in the team. Technical skills, but also business skills, and that's it.
Jim?
Arrogantly humble, right? Jürgen?
Humble, yes, with arrogant, that's sometimes.
What is that combination of being arrogant and humble? All at the same time.
Okay, so being moderator, I have to, finish on time. So I even returned 23 seconds back. Thank you very much.